The series finale of The Golden Girls betrays the promise that was made at the beginning of the series and carried throughout its 7 years. Let me explain. So in the pilot of The Golden Girls, Blanche gets engaged and plans a wedding for the next week. And during that week, the other girls panic. Blanche owns the house, they rent from her. What are they going to do? What's going to happen? Now the crisis is averted because Blanche calls off the wedding. And at the end of the pilot, all of the girls agree that no matter what happens, even if they do marry, they are all going to stick together. No one is getting kicked out, no one is moving. And that promise remains central to the series throughout its run. There are numerous points where one of them considers leaving, where even the city of Miami looks like it's going to evict one or more of them. But they endure every crisis, order is restored. Until that finale, where Blanche's cousin Lucas arrives, falls in love with Dorothy, and the two of them get married and move to Georgia. And the other three girls stay in Miami, including Dorothy's own mom. I wish I had a clever takeaway, but it's just kind of sad.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here with Conversations with Taz with Think About It Thursdays. Now, if you joined me last night, you know that we talked about the Alex Murdaugh murder trial. Ooh, I'm still able to say it. Y'all, the jury was deliberating and the verdict is in. Coming from USA Today, former South Carolina lawyer Alex Murdaugh found guilty of murder and killings of wife, son. A South Carolina jury found disbarred attorney Richard Alex Murdaugh guilty of murder Thursday in the 2021 killings of his wife and son. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours before Murdaugh, 54, was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Murdaugh's wife, Maggie, 52, and son, Paul, 22, were found fatally shot near dog kennels at the family's home on June 7, 2021. Murdaugh admitted in court that he lied to investigators when he told them he was not at the kennels before finding their bodies. After the verdict was read, Judge Clifton Newman scheduled Murdaugh's sentencing at 9:30 a.m. Friday and thanked the jurors for their service. The minimum sentence for murder is 30 years in prison. The South Carolina Attorney General's office is seeking life in prison without the possibility of parole. And also, if you joined me last night, you know that I made some references between Alex Murdaugh and O.J. Simpson. And darlings, O.J. Simpson has something to say. Lord, from the realm of you just can't make this stuff up, I'm just going to read you this headline from The Insider. O.J. Simpson says he believes Alex Murdaugh more than likely killed his wife and son, but wouldn't be surprised if he's acquitted. Orenthal James Simpson, I just bet. Lord have mercy, Lord. We have a lot more to get into tonight because, baby, the news, the politics, the shenanigans. The United States is still trying to do its best Cher impersonation and roll back time if they can find a way. But they're not trying to take back all the times that they hurt us. They're trying to continue to hurt us. But before we get into that, y'all know I love to expose a good coontastic coalition member. So Y'all remember that clip that was going around the social media stratosphere of Candace Owens saying she wanted to go back to a time, her grandfather's time, where men were stoic and they didn't show emotion and da 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 da. Baby, let's take a look how well that aged.
In a society like the one that my grandfather lived in.
A few years ago, Mr. Owens, Candace Owens' grandfather, was quoted talking about his youth while disavowing his granddaughter's political takes in part. And this is quoting Mr. Owens. "I'm from the South. I was born and mostly raised in North Carolina, and I know how it was. My father was attacked by the 3Ks back in the day, and he put me under the bed because of all the bullets that were coming into the house. When I peeped out, I saw people in black clothes and riding horses. Naturally, I grew up wondering who those people were that were riding those horses and shooting at us. Candace, the supremacists might pay you in money well, but the worth of courting them is not worth it."
See, having to put on a stoic face and all this other stuff, it was for survival. It was for survival. And Little Miss, I utilized the NAACP because she was being racially harassed. Now, just to flip the coin, because just like Diamond and Silk and the Hodge twins, it's far more lucrative to get a check for tap dancing and being a real life mobile minstrel show like vaudeville has made a resurrection. But always have their hand out when we make steps forward, when that progress comes. Yeah, I just don't fool with anybody that Harriet would have shot. Now, let's go on to Elon Musk, the product of South African apartheid and generational wealth, and his continued allegiance with racist.
Twitter CEO Elon Musk sunk to a new low, defending Scott Adams, the illustrator of the comic strip Dilbert. Adams went on a deplorable racist rant on YouTube.
The best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. I think it makes no sense whatsoever as a white citizen of America to try to help black citizens anymore.
He spewed, "I don't want to have anything to do with them," and called African Americans a hate group. Musk offered no criticism of Adams and tweeted that the media are the ones who are racist against whites and Asians. There was once a country where not having anything to do with black people was the law of the land until 1994. It was apartheid South Africa, the country where Musk happened to be born and raised until he was 17 years old. Coincidence? A New York Times article on Musk's life in South Africa said, interviews with relatives and former classmates of Musk reveal an upbringing in elite, segregated white communities that were littered with anti-black government propaganda and detached from the atrocities that white political leaders inflicted on the black majority. This emerging picture of Elon's prejudice is even more disturbing after Musk shared a Super Bowl suite with Fox News founder Rupert Murdough, a purveyor of race-baiting propaganda in his own right. Additionally, California is investigating complaints that Elon's company, Tesla, allowed rampant racial discrimination against African-American employees in its San Francisco factory. Tesla was also ordered to pay $15 million to a black employee after a jury decided last year that the car company had failed to stop racism he faced on the job. Personally, I am so sick and tired of white wine. No, not this stuff. Love this stuff. But delusional white people who can't stop whining that they are victims of discrimination. Here are the inconvenient facts. White men are just 30% of the population, but white men exercise minority rule over 42 legislatures, the House of Representatives, and statewide offices from coast to coast. Brookings found the net worth of a typical white family is nearly 10 times greater than that of a black family. Black taxpayers are 3 times more likely to face an IRS audit. The richest black mothers and their babies are twice as likely to die as the richest white mothers and their babies during childbirth. Black adults are about 5 times as likely as whites to say they've been unfairly stopped by police because of their race or ethnicity. Black Americans are 3.23 times more likely than white Americans to be killed by police. Yet white people are victims? More white wine. Twitter used to be compared to YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. Since Musk bought the platform, Twitter's online peers are the motley crew of Gab and Truth Social, Donald Trump's platform. Every day, Musk is sounding more like white grievance peddlers and Christian nationalists such as Bobo, Maddie, and Marge, who last week called for a civil war and a separation of the states. Elon's Twitter has sadly been reduced to a platform for prejudice, where shady characters manipulate 280 characters to spill white wine. No thanks, I think I've had enough.
Now, just to add a little bit more context to the creator of Dilbert, let's not forget that he said that he previously identified as Black and that he had to move out of the Black community because of a recent poll that wasn't really a poll. Please tell me when this very wealthy white man was living in a predominantly Black neighborhood and how the hell, what, you know what? From that, let's go on to actor Cranston schooling some people and Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens' boss, trying to step into the arena of this conversation. Let's go.
This is a video by Bryan Cranston that you need to see about the meaning of Make America Great Again.
The Make America Great Again. My comment is, do you accept that that could possibly be construed as a racist remark? And most people, a lot of people go, how could that be racist? Make America great again? I said, so just ask yourself from an African-American experience, when was it ever great in America for the African-American? When was it great? So if you're making it great again, it's not including them. So it's to teach us in the woke world to open up and accept the possibilities that our privilege has created blind spots for us. And maybe I haven't seen what is really happening yet in all my years.
And if you disagree with Bryan Cranston, there's a very simple way to show your disagreement is valid. Answer his question. Answer it. Put it in the comments. Answer it. Duet it and answer it. But if your response is going to be to call him hateful or anti-American or some nonsense like that, save your breath. Answer the question if you can.
So actor Bryan Cranston said this.
Make America Great Again. My comment is an African-American experience. When was it ever great?
And of course, Ben Shapiro didn't like that. So he responded by saying, we should all listen to him because he's good at reading lines that other people write. And he went to Los Angeles Valley College, the Harvard of North Hollywood. It seems like his point is that Bryan Cranston's degree is not prestigious enough to talk about such issues. It just makes me wonder, what does Ben think about people with loud political opinions that don't have any degrees at all? Because if a junior college degree is not enough for you to have a relevant opinion, then certainly dropping out of college would render your opinion completely irrelevant, right? Wouldn't it? Yeah, if you were staying intellectually consistent, that would be my guess. Look, Ben, I understand that part of being an Ivy League educated, $10,000 suit wearing Republican is tricking overall wearing non-college educated Republicans into believing that your policies are actually helping them. And I understand that white, non-college educated men have been the electoral engine of the Republican Party for the last 15 years. But Ben, I think you said the quiet part out loud. If you keep it up, they're going to start to realize what you really think about non-college educated peoples.
This is why it's important to remember the company that you keep. You can't go out and throw stones when your friends and your employees have fewer credentials than the people that you are trying to discredit, because they are not going to continue to perpetuate the BS that lines your pocket. Now, y'all, we are not done talking about East Palestine, Ohio. Let's get into it.
in Ohio got visits from both Donald Trump and Pete Buttigieg, but some Fox personalities insisted that others really should have been there too.
Think about the environmental activists and corporate America. They weren't there. I mean, with the activists, this is an Aaron Brockovich moment. I mean, there was a blockbuster Oscar-winning movie written about something like this.
Aaron Brockovich
Where's
is
Leo
actually
DiCaprio?
in East Palestine tonight, right now.
She is, but where's Julia Roberts?
What? What are you talking about? You realize...
When you cannot separate fact from fiction, when you cannot separate things, reality from fantasy, where is Julia? Now, if y'all remember last week, I showed you all and explained to you all the stunt that Governor DeWine and other Ohio politicians pulled in a woman's kitchen where they were like, oh, see, the water's fine. And when they put it out, they cut off the end of that clip where the woman said, oh, I'm sure, it's not my water. And everybody was like, see, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And Trump came through with a shipment from Amazon that he didn't pay for. It was already on its way. FEMA was already there. He had to take credit for it right before stiffing a McDonald's franchisee with the bill that he had a grand video claiming that he and his team were going to do something nice for the city. Water sourced in Ohio near the derailment is currently being pulled from the shelves. Think I'm joking? Y'all should know better. See you in 2 and 2. You know how we do.
And now bottled water is being pulled from Stop and Shop stores in New Jersey. This involves the 1-gallon bottles of Acadia spring water because it was sourced near the site of the toxic train derailment in Ohio. Now, the company says that their supplier is testing water quality regularly, and if the tests continue to show that there are no safety concerns, the products will return to stores. Other sizes of Acadia water are produced at different locations and not impacted.
So for those of you that thought that I was having an epic reach, you still believe? You still believe, Mr. I'm going to contradict a press conference I already had, Governor DeWine. Still think that whole individualism that is perpetuated within the United States is actually beneficial and actually real. See, everybody keeps acting as if each city, each state is its own individual thing and nothing seeps, nothing. Come on. Because the Ohio runs into the Mississippi. Just because something happens in your backyard does not mean that it will not affect your neighbor. And speaking of a trickle-down effect of the consequences of actions, it has been determined that those injured due to Trump's self-coup can now sue Trump. Let's take a look.
Breaking news. The Justice Department says it's okay for Capitol Police officers who were injured on January 6th to sue Trump for damages. Really, anyone who was hurt by January 6th would be allowed to sue Trump for damages, including Democratic lawmakers. I don't have any other info as to what they would sue him for specifically or what that trial would look like, but hopefully some of Legal Talk does and they can help us better understand it. I don't have any other info as to what they would sue him for specifically.
V is talking about the Justice Department saying that people who were injured on January 6th, 2020 at the Capitol could sue former President Trump. What would the injured person sue for? Well, a tort. When you're injured by somebody else, in addition to a crime, it can be a tort. If I run you down in my car, that's a tort. You can sue me. When there's a duty not to harm somebody, and usually there is, and what you do breaches that duty, then if what you did causes harm, then there's a tort. and the injured person can sue. The injured person must prove several things, including that the bad action was the proximate cause of the injury. Plaintiffs might have to prove that those who actually physically attacked people wouldn't have done so but for hearing Trump's speech that morning. That will be tough to prove.
In the world of torts, yes, it could be difficult to prove unless, and this is why a lot of people, if you pay attention, wait until a criminal trial is completed before pursuing a civil trial. Not always, but a lot of times. Because now you have things entered into the record, the public record, that could be used to further prove your point. Now, with the January 6th committee, there is a lot of things that were put into evidence, a lot of things that have been confirmed, a lot of testimony that could plausibly be utilized for such a case. Plausibly. But moving from Trump to Trump's arch nemesis, Ron DeSantis, and the new Ron DeSantis Fox News connection. But it's not off to that great of a start for Sir DeSantis. Take a look.
You know, there may be something to Donald Trump's claims that Fox News is desperately trying to push Ron DeSantis for president in 2024. Take this next clip, for example. You had Fox and Friends co-host Brian Kilmeade. He traveled down to Florida and he does what these, political idiots always do. We're going to go to a diner because that's where Americans apparently hang out in the eyes of Fox News. So he goes to a diner. And what he wants to do is find a bunch of people saying they support Ron DeSantis for president in 2024, except it didn't go as planned, and Kilmeade had to frantically run around the restaurant avoiding certain people just to try to find a single person to say they wanted DeSantis instead of Trump. So here's the clip. Brian Kilmeade absolutely humiliating himself. Take a look.
All right, Lawrence. First off, Metro Diner here. I got a question for you. Ready? All right. 2024. Who's pumped up for the election? All right. Rapid fire. Who's your man? Who's your woman?
My man, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Christy no. Christy no.
Who's your man?
Trump.
Or woman?
Trump.
Trump. A lot of Trump fans.
Trump and Nikki Haley.
And Nikki Haley.
Donald Trump and Nikki Haley.
All right, so far, a lot of Donald Trump. I see Governor DeSantis. What about President DeSantis?
I like it.
Who's your pick?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Trump or DeSantis? I'm either or.
So you're right in the middle.
Yes, I am.
What you pumped up for?
I am super pumped.
I feel like we need a little bit of a break from election to election. It goes from one.
He started to get really worried there at the end, especially with the woman with the DeSantis shirt. He got excited at first. He's like, oh, cool. You've got on a DeSantis shirt. What do you think? And she's like, he's like, just, could you fucking say it? Just come on, say you support DeSantis. But again, Trump may be right. Fox News might be trying to push Ron DeSantis for 2024. That's what it looked like to me in that clip. Kilmeade's like, who do you want? Okay, yeah, Trump, anybody else, somebody, anybody. Can somebody yell the name DeSantis? And even the woman in the DeSantis shirt was a little like, I don't know. Probably because she didn't want to get beat up by the idiot Trump supporters in the restaurant, dude. You kind of put her on the spot. You exposed everybody else as a MAGA freak. And here she is with a DeSantis shirt, probably worried, how the hell am I going to get to my car without these freaks in here attacking me? But it is what it is, and Fox News looked a little pathetic there. Brian Kilmeade always looks pathetic. He looked a little more pathetic than usual with that one. But it does seem like Fox News really is trying to push Ron DeSantis over Trump, and they've got good reason for that. I mean, Trump's kind of the reason they're getting sued by Dominion Voting Systems and Smartmatic, so they've got that axe to grind. They know that Donald Trump probably doesn't stand much of a chance beating President Biden. I know the polls right now show him beating Biden. I'm not buying into any of that crap right now. Trump can absolutely win the primary. He definitely is not going to win a general election ever again. And that's why Fox News is worried. They want a conservative in that White House, and they've lost all faith that Trump can get himself back in there.
Trump is too overtly corrupt for them. I'm saying overtly because it's not as if the GOP, especially the conservatives, are angelic in any way. Trump is too boisterous, and they let Trump go too far off the rails with all of his lying. He can't be trusted. And the fact that he loves to talk about his love letters between himself and Kim Jong-un and his admiration for Putin. Yeah. They're, yeah. And on top of that, DeSantis supporters and Trump supporters both believe the other are fascists. You know what? Just take a look for yourself.
What happens when Trump supporters rally in front of a DeSantis book signing? A group of Trump supporters led by Laura Loomer set up a rally in front of a DeSantis book signing today. And well, they got a taste of old DeSantis.
And they were in that line with their police. Yes, why? Because of what you're wearing? Because they told me to say anybody wearing Trump has to go right now. During the signing. Free speech. I'm sorry, guys. I have to call LPD now.
That's fine. There you go. That's all right.
Why are you acting like the far left?
We're acting like the far left trying to get Trump elected?
Yeah, well, you're acting like the far left. You're
trying to get Trump elected?
You've got the same...
Trying to get Trump elected. Trying to get Trump elected is the far left?
Yes.
Trying to get Trump elected is the far left?
Listen, I am a Trump supporter.
Well,
but
technically, you shouldn't be over there then.
I'm doing my job, dude.
So are we. So
Right.
are we.
But
So
you're
are we.
on private property. You need to leave.
Okay.
Sir, can I ask you a question?
You heard what he said. He said that DeSantis' people told them that anybody who's wearing a Trump hat, shirt, anything Trump, they have to leave. So Governor DeSantis likes to pretend like he's a governor in favor of free speech, right? He talks a big talk, but really he allows for elections to be stolen by big tech, and now he allows for people to be, have the cops called on them for simply supporting President Trump. We're not the radical left. We're not violent. We're simply supporting President Trump.
Fascism sucks, huh? This Trump-DeSantis fight is off to a great start, and it's delicious.
Oh, how Trump supporters have such a short memory. Now, remember, just a week ago, Trump supporters from the boomer generation attacked a fellow white person at a Trump rally because that person had on a Black Lives Matter shirt. Trump supporters have repeatedly attacked non-Trump supporters at rallies, in front of rallies, etc. And since when is Ron DeSantis known for free speech? This is the same person who wants to put together a board as a member of the government, a governor of a state, in order to tell a privately owned business, Disney, what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot produce. Fascism all around. Fascism completely all around. But it's what they do. But let's get into some more DeSantis news.
I have a big legislative session coming up. I made promises to the folks about what I would deliver, and we're going to deliver a lot of wins over the next few months.
And Florida Republican lawmakers are not wasting any time getting started. They have filed a bill today that would expand on the so-called Don't Say Gay bill. It would restrict the use of pronouns in schools by requiring them to match the assigned identity of the person being described. They have also filed a bill that would eliminate the state's Democratic Party by directing the Florida Division of Elections to immediately cancel the filings of a political party to include its registration and approved status as a political party if the party's platform has previously advocated for or been in support of slavery or involuntary servitude. And that is because Southern Democrats, of course, advocated for and defended slavery during the Civil War.
Ron DeSantis better be careful with his beef against Disney, because I know Disney can be petty. And from one petty bitch to another, Disney, I got some advice on how. As we just all found out, Ron DeSantis got married at Disney. Out here looking like a Wish version of Gaston. Now what you need to do, Disney, is take that image from his wedding and create a whole evil villain story using that image, call him Don McSantis, the evil overlord, killer of joy. I mean, that's what I would do. Funny part is, Ronnie got married in Disney and demanded that there not be any Disney characters present. No Mickey, no Donald. What a fascist Debbie Downer. That's like me getting married at the beach and demanding there be no sand. Like, you're insane, bro. And the funny part is, this whole thing is just to put his buddies, aka donors, on the board of Disney. Like, what in the Disney adult crazy shit is that? Disney, you better hurry up getting that script. Get your animators ready, because this shit needs to come out in 2023. Beef with Disney. Florida cannot Florida without Disney. You better be careful. Disney's like the mob, bro. Ron DeSantis is gonna wake up with a goofy head in his bed. All because Disney supports the LGBTQ community. This was his opportunity to strike. This is your man, Florida, and now he's fucking with your bread and butter. It's kind of hard to have the happiest place on earth in the most fascist place on earth. Be careful what you wish upon a star for, because you're about to fuck around and find out. Anyways, bye!
Now, tell me again how old Ronnie Boy is about free speech? Also, here's a little history nugget. Before there was Hollywood in California, guess where most movies were produced? Florida. Want to know why that stopped? Racism and a touch of fascism. Because that's where a lot of Black, brown, indigenous people of color were getting acting roles, were being put in front of the screen. They weren't just cooking and a part of craft services or being runners or things like that. Florida screwed itself over. Could you imagine if Florida still had Hollywood and had Disney? Maybe they would be higher up in education and things like that. But you know, Ronnie Boy's decisions just takes Disney's debt and put it into the responsibility pockets of its taxpayers. Disney still gets its tax cuts. Disney is a global conglomerate. So, yeah. But I thought conservative GOPs were about small government. But they keep on just putting government in the midst of everything. Oh, that's right. Because their constituency believes in small federal government. Because they act like state and local government isn't really government. Let's get into the ad. When we come back, we're going to jump into all things Tennessee, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and her participation in the Double Down duo, and more. See y'all in 2 and 2.
DeSantis?
Come on, man.
DeSantis doesn't have a
Man,
shot.
45,
He's a white
45.
nationalist.
Oh, stop that.
He's
Jamal.
a nationalist.
No,
he's a
not.
white supremacist.
No, he's not, man.
He's anti-gay.
No, he's
he's
not.
anti-woman.
No,
he's anti-black.
Listen,
there's
so
no way he can be
so
president.
My former colleagues in the legislature,
Who's the other one? Who's the other
Republican
one?
and Democrat, when all that stuff was coming up last year, I called them. I said, tell me what's happening. They were like, it's really not that, but people are trying to raise a fuss. I've had the conversations. It's not true. I've had the conversations.
Why can't those who have been incarcerated, who are released, who have done their time, why can't they be re-enfranchised and be allowed to vote?
They are in our state. That's
no, they're
already
not,
happening.
man. They got
Jamal,
to pay all kinds of fines and all that.
Jamal,
Anyway,
I voted for the bill. Jamal, I was there when they drafted it.
Who's the second guy? Who's the second guy? Second person?
Come on now. You already know that's Trump and Ron.
Trump and Ron?
Trump and Ron. That's two different people, man.
So Trump claims Florida now? He don't claim New York?
You know he been claimed Florida.
2 years now.
Ben claimed. That's what he said. Listen,
Felicia.
that's what he said. That's what he said to Kathy.
Oh.
He told Kathy Hochul, like, he said, I gotta go.
Listen, both those dudes gonna get crushed.
Stop. By who? The man at 1600?
Gretchen
please.
Whitmore, if she wanted to jump in, she would kill both of them. Secondly, Biden will kill both of them. Biden passed three bipartisan pieces of legislation.
You know what that's like? You know what that's like? That's like saying Josh Allen is better than Patrick Mahomes. Come on now.
Biden passed
sell that to somebody else.
Biden passed three bipartisan pieces of legislation after an insurrection during a global pandemic, opened back up the schools, killing the game.
Are we talking about the infrastructure bill?
80-something years
old.
old.
Talking about the infrastructure bill? That's what we talking about?
DeSantis ain't even...
The infrastructure bill is what we talking about?
Biden will wipe the floor with DeSantis.
In what world?
Come on,
In what world? Bizarro land?
CHIPS Act.
Stop.
Infrastructure bill.
Stop.
Safer Communities
Stop.
Act. Historic investments in climate. $35 insulin.
High
Biden will destroy
inflation,
DeSantis.
over on southern border, fentanyl in everybody's streets. Look, we can do the same thing. I can do the same thing. What's he got? What's his
handsome black men. Handsome black men. We try to get these handsome black men. Listen, we got to bring black men together.
That's right.
Yes.
Hey,
peace, man.
up, bro?
Take it easy.
I wanted to show that clip to show you just how lost in the sauce Black men that choose to align themselves with the conservative GOP are. Byron Donalds continues to quadruple down on obvious lies. Obvious lies. But you know, everything is just so easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Especially for those of us in marginalized communities and women and children and all that stuff, you know, because we got religion, right? We have Christianity. We have Protestantism in the United States. Oh, that's right. That shit ain't working out either. Take a look.
Now to a shocking claim that one of the country's largest Christian denominations suppressed, ignored, and stonewalled sexual abuse allegations for nearly 2 decades. A scathing new report commissioned by the Southern Baptist Convention describes extensive cover-ups by senior leaders who were, quote, singularly focused on avoiding liability. Here's CBS's Nikki Batiste.
At just 8 years old, Hannah Kate Williams says her father, a Southern Baptist pastor, began sexually abusing her.
I disclosed to SBC leadership and was promised it would be taken care of and it would never happen again. But it did.
Now, a 7-month independent investigation revealed for almost 2 decades, survivors of abuse contacted the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee to report child molesters and other abusers, only to be met time and time again with resistance, stonewalling, and even outright hostility. The 288-page report also found the SBC kept a secret running list of accused Baptist ministers to avoid being sued, even as the committee publicly claimed it didn't have the authority to create such a list. More than 400 people on it were believed to be affiliated with the SBC at some point. And allegations of abuse went up to the very top, including a sexual assault claim against former SBC President Johnny Hunt, which he denied in a Facebook post Sunday night.
But what, as a survivor, would you like to see change?
I would like to see leaders taking the recommendations of outside experts, not as attacks on their beliefs, but as tools to protect those in their care.
In a statement, the SBC's executive committee said it was reviewing the report and is, quote, committed to doing all we can to prevent future instances of sexual abuse in churches. Williams filed a lawsuit against the SBC on Friday.
I was called a liar. I was called mentally deranged, incompetent, an enemy of God.
We reached out to Williams' father, but have not heard back. In the past few months, I've spoken with about a dozen other men and women who say they were sexually abused by church leaders between the ages of 9 and 14. But the statutes of limitations in their cases have expired. John?
Nikki Batiste. Thank you, Nikki.
Meet George Allen Riekers, a conservative Baptist minister, co-founder of the vehemently anti-gay group, the Family Research Council, and one of the nation's loudest proponents of the idea that homosexuality can be cured. Here's George Riekers, photographed by the Miami New Times at Miami's airport, returning from a 10-day European vacation with a much younger, quite hunky companion, who he met and hired through the website rentboy.com. When the story broke in the Miami New Times, Mr. Riekers told the paper that he had hired this young man in question because, quote, I had surgery and I can't lift luggage, which doesn't explain why in this New Times photo, as you can see, it is Mr. Riekers who is the one wrangling the cart, not his young consort. Mr. Riekers also told the paper that he used the trip to explain that the Christian faith is based in love and to show the rent boy how he too could be saved. Later, the young man who Mr. Riekers brought to Europe told the paper that he had spent part of each day on that trip giving Mr. Riekers massages. Very, very specific massages.
Today, the New Times published new details of the interaction between Riekers and Roman. Quoting the website, Roman explains he gave Riekers the same massage, which involves a technique the minister calls the long stroke, twice before traveling together. Must be a medical term. Today, Riekers gave the long goodbye to the National Association for Research and Therapy of Homosexuality, NARTH.
They really think the rest of us are stupid. They really do. Don't get a traveling nurse. Don't get a medical professional. Go to that specific website. But conservatives also say they're all about good Christian values and peace and love and threatening the sitting president.
First Selectman Tara Carr's Twitter account has been suspended since yesterday afternoon. Now, some say her tweet was violent, but in a statement, she says she was just referencing the Chinese spy balloon. 3 weeks ago, RNC Research on Twitter posted a 3-second clip of Vice President Kamala Harris saying, "So we have a lot to be thankful for in our president." Brookfield First Selectman Tara Carr commented below saying, "He's aiding and abetting the enemy. Ready, aim, fire, one shot, one kill. That's simple." Carr's tweet was met with strong reactions, especially from lawmakers and gun control advocates who were worried she used language associated with gunfire. State Representative Matt Blumenthal was one of them.
It seems to be threatening the president, and it's just really completely unacceptable, and everyone has to call it out.
Carr's Twitter account has been suspended since Monday afternoon. Fox 61 reached out to the Brookfield Republican Town Committee, whose vice chairman responded in a Facebook message saying her tweet was taken out of context. Today, Carr released a lengthy statement, and she said in part, quote, "I urged prompt action to take down the Chinese Communist Party balloon with one shot, one kill," and went on to say her words have been twisted. But the chairman of Brookfield's Democratic Town Committee says Carr has showed behavior like this in the past on Twitter, emphasizing his committee were also not the ones to stir up this controversy.
It's not the first time she had tweeted something that somebody might find offensive, so not surprised this one was maybe a little more shocking.
Her tweet spreading like wildfire throughout the town of Brookfield. Those who have known Carr for a long time came to her defense, calling the matter
just baloney. I don't know another way to put it. It's not true. It's completely false. I know her. I know her family. Great person. People in Brookfield love her. She loves Brookfield. She loves this country.
Now, we did want to speak to Carr herself, but we were told she is out of state on vacation.
Isn't it amazing that every time they discover that the majority of the population, because they keep saying they're the silent majority, does not agree with them, their words are misconstrued? Sounds like the excuses we've heard for quite a while regarding Donald J. Trump. He says what he says and he means it. But then, you took that out of context. That's not what he meant. Let me translate that for you. This is the rhetoric that we consistently get from problematic people, from racists, homophobes, transphobes, overall bigots. Their words are always misconstrued. No, you said it with your whole chest. And I've said it before, and let me say it again. If you truly believe something, you have no problem saying it regardless of who is around. I'm just saying. But moving on. If you're still out here bootlicking for the blue, let me show you once again why we say ACAB.
Do you harbor any racial animus toward African Americans?
Can you rephrase that question, sir?
You know what animus means? Do you have any ill feelings toward African Americans in general?
Ill feelings? I'm not.
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat that question one more time, sir?
Do you have any ill feelings in general against African Americans?
I have feelings for African Americans, sir.
What are your feelings?
They're just human beings, sir.
Did you hear my question, sir? Do you have any ill feelings toward African Americans?
I do, sir.
Okay. Tell me about your feelings.
I grew up in the city of Compton, sir. Mostly male Hispanics, African Americans, so.
This is why we say the police are to black men what the medical profession is to black women. Now, let's get into Marjorie Taylor Greene and her participation in the Double Down duo. Get a snack, get a beverage, because it's about messaging. It's not about facts or truth with them.
Marjorie Taylor Greene blamed the overdose deaths of this woman's children on the Biden administration.
The year Caleb was born, 2000, there were 20,000 drug-related deaths. And the year they died, it was 5 times as many.
This government has failed you, and it's failing American families.
But what she didn't say is that the 2 deaths occurred in July of 2020, which by her incredibly flawed logic would place the blame on the Trump administration. Reasonable people can argue that the Biden administration is not doing enough to curb fentanyl deaths in the United States, but how shameful is it for Marjorie Taylor Greene to use this heartbroken mother as a political pawn and just not even get the basic facts straight?
Let's talk about this doubling down duo, shall we? Yeah. Marge put out this tweet. Listen to this mother who lost 2 children to fentanyl poisoning tell the truth about both of her sons' murders because of the Biden administration's refusal to secure our border and stop the cartels from murdering Americans every day by Chinese fentanyl. Now, those accusations are all over the place, but let's see what this woman had to say.
It should never have happened to you. It should never happen to any family. It happens to families at home where I live. It happens to pretty much everyone we know. And I want to ask you, first I want to thank you for being brave to come here and share your grief with our committee. But Ms. Kiesling, would your sons be alive today if our government would secure our southern border?
The year Caleb was born, 2000, there were 20,000 drug-related deaths. And the year they died, it was 5 times as many. And I appreciate you using the term fentanyl poisoning because that's what it was. It wasn't an overdose. They had no idea that they were doing anything that could kill them. And it's because fentanyl got into this country. I heard this man over here from the Cato Institute, talk about, well, it's because of demand. What I'm hearing him say is they asked for it. What the hell? Seriously? Are you kidding me? We need to protect our children. They didn't ask for that. This wasn't demand. They wanted the fentanyl. They didn't want fentanyl. They thought they were getting Percocets.
Now, her 2 adoptee sons had a long battle with drug addiction. She talks about it, outlines it, and you can go look it up. But I just want to point something out. Her sons died July 29th of 2020. 2020. Her sons died 6 months before Biden even took office. Not to mention the very stats that Marge introduced terminated on April 2021, only 3 months after Biden had been in office, not long enough for him to actually do anything about fentanyl or even the border in respects to putting policy in place and having it actually take effect and be impactful. This is all political theater to get the base riled up, to make you believe that Biden killed these children. And what's most telling about this story is when Greene's office was asked about her tweet blaming the Biden administration for these deaths in 2020 under Trump, spokesman Nick Dyer, who you saw in the first picture, responded by saying lots of people have died from drugs under Biden. And do you think they give a about your bullshit fact checking? They don't care about the truth. If you're not paying attention, you should start. And if you want to help bring honesty and integrity and transparency to politics, feel free to do this. Thanks.
Now to add some further context, let's not forget that previously I covered, remember the whole Charlottesville tiki party that was going on? One of the main participants was caught trafficking fentanyl into the United States, a United States citizen, a white, cisgendered, straight United States citizen. And he took his own life to avoid accountability. See, not only are they trying to tell you that the government that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a part of, the federal government, isn't protecting the southern border because, that's the only border we seem to have. They're trying to once again vilify Black and brown immigrants coming in for asylum, for refuge, for sanctuary. But see, what they're not telling you ever is that it is easier for a citizen of the United States to cross the border with substances. Because when you're coming in, seeking asylum, seeking refuge, there's no privacy. They're going through everything. But if you've traveled internationally as a United States citizen, if you know, you know. Now, I told you all at the top of the show that the United States is doing its best to imitate Cher's turn back time. And we know that the United States' current history in the making isn't that great. If you're not a part of the 1% and you're cis male, pseudo heterosexual, and pseudo Christian. But let's take a look at what I am now deeming Jim Crow, Mississippi.
For those of you that don't know, Jackson, Mississippi just passed what is being called the Jim Crow Law. Passed. It passed. If you don't believe me, I need you to Google it. I need you to Google it, and I need you to understand that this is not an isolated thing. What the GOP does is they try different things out in different states, and when they see that it works, then they start other governors and other local and state governments in other states start mimicking what the other states did. And so you have this in Mississippi. You have AP studies courses being banned in Florida. You have books being banned that are about LGBTQ, about indigenous people, about enslaved Africans. You have some folks in Texas looking to ban the word racism. Yep. Welcome to America.
Earlier this month, white representatives in the Mississippi House approved a bill to create a new district that includes all of the majority white neighborhoods in Jackson, a capital city that is 83% black. This includes creating a criminal justice system for the district.
Mississippi is slowly and surely falling back into the Jim Crow South. White residents are in the process of trying to create a separate judicial system for the black residents of Mississippi. These residents would not have any ability to vote those individuals into office or remove them from office for discriminatory practices. This is a prime example of taxation without representation. And I don't understand why there isn't a larger national outcry that pushbacks against this type of rhetoric, these type of policies that would literally segregate and oppress communities of color in broad daylight. This is the GOP testing the temperature of how far they can go. And if we don't do something, they'll go even farther.
Coming from the MississippiFreePress.org. That's the MississippiFreePress.org. Benign neglect. There's obvious racism within the Mississippi legislature. This has been explained hundreds of times, I'm sure, but in light of the current fight to avoid a state takeover in Jackson this legislative session, it bears repeating. Black people can't be systemically racist. We can be prejudiced. We can be biased. We can indeed discriminate against someone, but we do not have the historic, political, or financial infrastructure to be systemically, structurally, or institutionally racist, especially if we're talking about a place like Mississippi. I know a lot of Mississippi patriots got together at their last meeting and got the directive to start recreating narratives with code words, like how they've turned woke into an insult, but calling Black folks racist because we're calling out the obvious racism that's currently stinking up the Capitol is nothing more than cheap parlor tricks. See, although Mississippi has the largest Black population of any state in the country, white Republicans ranging from moderate to full-on racists still run the legislature. They hold a 77-42 majority in the House and a 36-16 majority in the Senate. The majority is basically able to push whatever tripe through they wish or kill whatever bill they wish. During this session, the obvious target is Jackson and its Black leadership. Bills designed to undermine Black leadership. Systemic racism occurs when one group is able to force their will on another through the passing of legislation, laws, or practices that form the system of specifically targeting and oppressing a group of people. For example, redlining, gentrification, gerrymandering, redistricting, etc. How is this working right now in Mississippi? Glad you asked. Jackson, Mississippi is 82.8% Black. It is a Black mayor and a majority Black city council. All our county supervisors are Black. It's also the capital city where legislators have to spend half their year in session. Many of them are not happy that Black folks running. Many of them are not happy at all. Black folks are running Mississippi's capital. It's much too valuable and has valuable chips, i.e. the airport, Jackson State, Mississippi, UMMC Medical School, The legacy of redlining in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, you won't get any of them to admit this on record, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. They will also tell you that this has nothing to do with the color of the mayor's skin, but with his incompetence, which I always found hilarious considering that the state of Mississippi has one of the most poorly run governments in the nation. For years, the state has watched us deal with 100-year-old water pipes, dilapidated school buildings, a shrinking police force, and a shrinking tax base. A huge chunk of that base was white folks who fled from the city like it was on fire in 1997 when Jackson elected its first Black mayor, Harvey Johnson, which added to the white disinvestment that blew up after forced school integration in the early 1970s. Let me repeat that. Forced school integration in the 1970s. See how they keep acting as if national history regarding racial disparities was so long ago that no one was alive for it? Every ask, every request, and every plan, former Mayor Tony Yarber presented the legislature with one plan in 2015 was met with a no. The benign neglect has gone on for years. Finally, the current Lumumba administration, realizing that Jacksonians were being left for dead, went out and secured $600 million in federal funds and $195 million from other funding sources to help fix the city's water woes. Systemic racism in the state legislature introducing new bills designed to undermine the Black leadership of their own capital city and trying to usurp power away from them. David Parker's Senate Bill 2889 looks to divert the monies Congress approved outside Jackson and put a regional board in charge of our water and sewer systems. That bill is headed to the House. House Bill 1168, authored by Representative Trey Lamar of North Mississippi, will require funds from the 1% sales tax commission to be spent on water and sewer, excluding roads and bridges. We keep telling you, we're not advancing in this country because of the high levels of anti-Blackness, coupled with the intersectionality of the LGBTQIA plus community. But y'all don't want to hear it. Y'all don't want to hear it. But let's get into Tennessee and the shenanigans there. Let's start with the more lighthearted, if you will, of the stories.
Remember dressing in drag in 1977, Governor? Remember this?
What a ridiculous question that is. Conflating something like that to sexualized entertainment in front of children, which is a very serious subject.
Drag is not sexual.
This is Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, who plans to sign one of the first bills in the country to restrict drag show performances into law. Over the weekend, a photo of him in drag surfaced. Multiple reporters have brought up this old photo of Bill Lee because the bill associates any form of dressing outside of one's gender as adult entertainment.
I think the concern is what's right there in that building, children that are potentially exposed to sexualized entertainment, to obscenity, and we need to make sure that they're not. I think that's something that should happen in Tennessee, and it will because of this bill.
Under this intentionally vague bill, dressing up in drag at a high school could be criminalized, which is what Bill Lee did.
This is you at a high school, Governor. This right here is you at a high school.
Yeah.
Is it only illegal when gay people do it, Governor?
Critics say the bill is wholly unconstitutional and warn that the vague wording could have massive consequences.
This is a picture from the Associated Press article that I'm about to read to you. As Tennessee, others target drag shows, many wonder why. If I hadn't been a girl, I'd have been a drag queen. Dolly Parton has uttered those words famously and often. But if she really were a drag queen, one of Tennessee's most famous daughters would likely be out of a job under legislation signed into law by Republican Governor Bill Lee on Thursday. Lee signed off on the legislation without issuing a statement or having a public ceremony. The bill goes into effect July 1st. Across the country, conservative activists and politicians complain that drag contributes to the sexualization or grooming of children. Several states are considering restrictions, but none have acted as fast as Tennessee. The efforts seek to extinguish popular drag story hours at which queens read to kids. Organizers of LGBTQ pride events said they put a chill on their parades, and advocates note that the bills, pushed largely by Republicans, burden businesses in an un-Republican fashion. How many politicians have been under investigation? How many politicians have wives young enough to be their daughters or granddaughters? Earlier in this segment alone, we talked about ministers and clergy hiding abuse and abusing their own children and other children. A story ran today where a minister, for the second time, was caught molesting a child. And that's just 2 times that he's been caught and arrested. But adults dressing up in costumes, wigs, and makeup, no different than the theater, no different than what happens on the silver screen and the small screen, are somehow grooming children. Guess we forgot about bosom buddies, huh? Guess this would be the wrong generation for the show My Two Dads. But that's not the only thing going on in Tennessee. There's more.
It was never our founders' intent that we have this separation of church and state. Do I think this violates the Constitution? Absolutely not.
It took it from the age of enlightenment, liberty, virtue, and commerce. And it was very secular. When we talk about church and state, you are correct that it's not in the Constitution, but the phrase is interchangeable with non-establishment. What's also not in the Constitution is any mention of God. Can't have a religious test to run for office. There's Article 3, the Supreme Court of the United States, that interprets the Constitution. Many instances throughout the years, church and state coming up. The Lemon Test was set up. It had 3 prongs to it. I think this bill would take us across the line. The fundraising goal was not met, so now we're turning to the taxpayers to subsidize it. That's where I think it is unconstitutional. I can't vote for it.
There are lots of things that the government is not good at doing that these faith-based organizations can do far better.
We continue to look to government to solve significant issues that government is simply not equipped to solve.
If these programs are better at delivering those services, then why are we here asking for them to fall under the government and become part of the government? The proposed language specifically lifts the ban on state employees benefiting from nonprofit partner activity. Can you explain to me how that is not a conflict of interest?
These team members of this office will now be compensated by the state because that's where the funding will come from.
I do think it's a conflict of interest. I think it's a problem, and I would encourage you to take a look at it.
I just think about things like Brown versus the Board of Education, Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson. They were all wrong decisions by the Supreme Court.
I agree with you. There's been some bad decisions, and they were overturned, but it is not overturned right now. It is the law of the land.
Let's go. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it.
Coming from au.org, is the separation of church and state in the Constitution? The separation of church and state is baked into our founding documents and our system of government. Still, plenty of people argue that because the specific phrase separation of church and state doesn't appear word for word in the Constitution, there is no such thing. People like Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk. That's not in the Constitution. It was a stinking letter and it means nothing like what they say it does. The argument that actually words, the separation of church and state, aren't in the Constitution is feeble. As you must guess from our name, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, we've heard it more times than we can count. The powerful metaphor. Firstly, yes, Thomas Jefferson penned the wall metaphor in a letter to the Danbury Baptists in 1802. He celebrated the First Amendment for building a wall of separation between church and state. The Supreme Court has endorsed this view many times, first in 1878. And then again in 1947, 1948, 1961, three times, 1962, 1963, 1968, 1973, 1977, 1982, and again in countless concurrences, dissents, and lower court opinions, according to a recent law review article. The wall metaphor nicely sums up the relationship. James Madison also used a similar phrase in a later essay. Strongly guarded is the separation between religion and government in the Constitution of the United States. That's pretty clear. And he basically wrote the First Amendment and is known as the father of the Constitution. Does it matter that the words aren't in the Constitution verbatim? No, neither is the phrase fair trial, but we use that phrase to describe several big rights protected in the Bill of Rights. The Revolutionary Constitution. Church-state separation is woven into the very fabric of our Constitution. Our Constitution was the first to declare that power comes from people, not gods. The words "we the people" are poetic, but so much more. They declared a new source of power. Our Constitution was the first not to mention a god or deity. Obviously, that was a deliberate choice. At the time, some people objected to the omission, but the framers insisted on a secular text. Our Constitution was the first to ban religious tests for public office. That ban contains the most clear and emphatic language in the document that's often deliberately vague. It reads, "No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust." That was the only mention of religion in the original unamended text. But that wasn't enough. The framers wanted even more. So they wrote the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Jefferson revered those words so much that he wrote the metaphor that gives AU its name to this day. The amendment includes both the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. The two clauses work together. The separation of the Establishment Clause is one of the primary ways we protect the religious freedom of the Free Exercise Clause. Our Constitution guarantees a secular government. It does this in part to protect religious freedom for all. That's why religious leaders have backed church-state separation from the earliest days of the American colonies to the folks who founded AU, to the clergy on AU's Faith Advisory Council today. True religious freedom needs this separation. And let me also add this caveat. You cannot request or demand respect for your beliefs when you're constantly trying to denigrate another's. But that's not the only thing going on in Tennessee. Just like we have Jim Crow planting its seeds once again in Mississippi, Tennessee wants to begin cultivating strange fruit again.
Leader Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Representative Powers, for bringing this. I think it's a very good idea. And I was just wondering about, could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also. And also, I would like to sign on to your bill, sir. Thank you. Leader Cheryl.
I regret that I used some very poor judgment in voicing my support of a colleague's bill in Criminal Justice Committee. I sincerely apologize to anyone who may I have hurt or offended. Thank you.
I couldn't believe that I was hearing that. We've got to acknowledge that there is a cultural problem on the Hill. Make an effort to be better behind this. All of us need to work, but those who are silent in the face of those comments really need to work. It evokes the sordid history of not just Tennessee, but of America, of those days when lynchings were a common practice, when due process was denied to black men. Let's have a grown folks conversation. I wasn't alive back then either, but I can assure you that multi-generational trauma still exists. I probably would have accepted the apology a lot better if the representative had come to those on the committee and offered such an apology. It doesn't seem sincere to me when it's made public. I've tried to be a gentleman and scholar since I was elected, but to sit there and have a statement made that only evokes in the minds of anyone who has any sense of history of lynchings, racial lynchings, has pushed me past my point. Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to working with you in leadership on how we improve the tone, how we create a better atmosphere. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Representative Howe, you're recognized.
After the initial caveat was requested to be added to the bill, that particular representative was questioned and he smirked. He knew what he was doing. He knows full well about strange fruit because this was their post-church activity on Sundays. This is how he grew up. This is how he was introduced to picnics. I'm pretty certain that his family still has postcards from those gatherings on a good Sunday afternoon. When you question why there's such bad behavior by the good Christians on Sunday, that's why. See, they just believe that going into the house of the Lord is enough to get them through the mythical pearly gates and into their mansion in the sky. He's only apologetic because as I've said several times tonight, he thought more people would be on his side. And he ignored the federal legislation of the Biden administration, the Emmett Till bill that made lynching a federal hate crime because they never stopped lynching us. It's just now they try to cover up and say that it was suicide, even when our hands are tied behind our back and we're swinging in a public place. Yeah. They want to go back to cultivating and harvesting strange fruit. Now, we know that the educational system within the United States is trash. It is trash. The Daughters of the Confederacy and many of these other lineage organizations have done their damnedest to make sure that, there's no type of white guilt or fragility, just white saviorism put into any type of education. Well, now they want to take the nuance out because now nuance is making them uncomfortable. Even when talking about white women are now uncomfortable. I'm not exaggerating. Take a look and listen.
Therefore, we must keep our educational instruction pure without the political nuances.
Who is Martha Washington?
His wife.
Under your bill, how could you mention that in a classroom?
So to me, that's not sexual orientation.
Really? So it's only really certain sexual orientations that you want prohibited from introduction in the
Do you
classroom.
have language to make that better, to make it where you're not talking?
Lady, I didn't introduce your bill.
Okay.
Which sexual orientations do you believe should be prohibited from Missouri classrooms?
I'll have a moral compass. And my moral compass is compared with the Bible. You can believe something without putting that onto somebody.
I'm asking about the language of your bill and how it would permit the mention of the historical figure Martha Washington. Could you explain that to me?
So why is she famous? Is she famous because she's married to George Washington?
It seems like that would be a relevant fact in her biography, yes. Could it be mentioned under the plain reading language of your bill? Is that a no?
I don't know, sir.
Okay. What about, are you familiar with the historical figure Harvey Milk?
No, I'm not.
The first openly gay elected councilman in San Francisco, first openly gay elected politician in the country. He was never mentioned, I guess, in any of your classrooms. Do you believe that that story should ever be told in a Missouri classroom?
I have no idea, gentlemen, because I don't know his story.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Oberfell decision?
No, I am not.
Did you catch that she said that she should be guided by her moral compass, which aligns with the Bible? Then took a breath and said that you can believe something without forcing it onto someone else. Ooh, the irony is piping hot with this one. Then she asked if Martha Washington was famous for being married to George Washington. Yes, otherwise we wouldn't have known who she was outside in historical texts regarding her dowry slaves. And I mean, the complexities that are the Washington family are just ripe with dispelling a lot of stereotypes that are put upon Black, Indigenous, excuse me, Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color. Because did you know that Martha Washington and George Washington, they didn't have any children of their own. See, he was raising her children from a previous marriage. And then they also raised two of her grandchildren because, she had a daughter that went off, got married again, but didn't raise those two kids. But I thought that was stuff that Black folks do. I keep telling y'all what the traditions really are in this country and what white culture really is in this country, but y'all don't want to hear me though. And see, they love to say that George Washington didn't have slaves, but he did. See, there were dowry slaves and then there were his slaves. And see, they were so deeply ingrained into slavery that they even took out full-page ads to try to track down one particular runaway slave of theirs. Yeah. And see, George didn't want to do certain things regarding slavery because of the placement of the two locations of the original presidential mansions, the original White House. Keep telling y'all, it's not about taking the moral high ground or having ethics or giving a damn about your fellow man. It's about legacy. It's about what's going to get you reelected. It's how it's always been since the political systems were set up within this country. But, what do you expect from a country built upon stolen land by the hands of stolen people? Let's watch Matt Gaetz make a fool out of himself again.
Is the Azov battalion getting access to U.S. weapons?
Not that I'm aware of, but if you have information,
I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the Global Times investigative report that that talks about training. It's from the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensics Research Lab, citing that the Azov battalion was even getting stuff as far back as 2018.
Without objection, so ordered.
Any reason to disagree with that assessment?
Is this the? I'm sorry. Is this the Global Times from China?
No, this is. Well,
that's what you read.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, would that be a reason?
As a general matter, I don't take Beijing's propaganda.
Well, no. Yeah, but just tell me if the allegation is true or false. I mean,
I don't have any evidence one way or the other. As a general matter, I don't take Beijing's propaganda at face value.
Fair enough. I would agree with that assessment.
The very first committee hearing of this Congress, Mr. Gaetz, after we had all agreed on what the committee's plan was going to be, it was going to be voice voted, everyone agreed, Mr. Gaetz wanted to offer an amendment to say the Pledge of Allegiance. That's great. Every single person on our side supported that. Now, I don't think he really genuinely cares about saying the Pledge of Allegiance, but he wanted to do it, again, to own the libs and to see if we would vote against it. We didn't. But who did he bring in here to say the Pledge of Allegiance? Who did he parade in here in a uniform? Somebody that he met at a gun club, he said, locally. Okay. Mr. Cicilline had the crazy idea that maybe we should vet the people who come in here, make sure they're not insurrectionists. Mr. McClintock, I am not kidding you. Mr. McClintock said, well, it's not like we're going to invite somebody who committed murder. No, he literally said that. It's not like we're going to invite somebody who committed murder. Okay, well, who did Mr. Gaetz bring? He brought Corey Beekman. Corey Beekman in 2019 was in a standoff with the Michigan police after he was arrested and charged with murder, assault with intent to commit murder, and 2 counts of felony firearm possession. The family of the victims said Mr. Gaetz doing that, it was like getting a dagger stuck in our heart again. We were infuriated when we first saw it. I was disgusted with the whole thing. That's why there's a trust deficit here. You pull off a public stunt to try and own the libs, and what you did was you brought in a guy who allegedly shot 2 people and killed one of them. That's where the trust deficit is. So you can play your games, conduct your stunts. We're here to get shit done.
I keep telling you all, when it comes to conservative GOP politics, it's not about the truth. It's not about facts. It's about messaging. What is going to rile you up? What is going to fearmonger you into keeping them in office? It's not about getting anything done. It's not about making anything easier for you. Inflation is high, but corporate profits are even higher. Cost of living is not matching the cost of living. And they keep telling you the government is doing you wrong. And you keep forgetting that they are the government. They want to keep bringing people in front of you, telling you that they should be the heroes and telling you to demonize those that are actual heroes. But then when everything falls apart, you're looking at Black, brown, indigenous women of color to once again, as we have done historically, pick up the pieces, put them back together, and save you. But I thought you were the mighty silent majority that has it all figured out, that the rest of us are the sheep. And you have all of this inside information where you can fix all the woes. Whoo, child. Anyway, let's not forget that March is Women's History Month. So if you are a woman making history, if you know a woman making history, please contact me either through any of my DMs. All my social media is tied to the link tree in my bio, or you can email me. That is also in my bio. I'd love to have you on. Let's talk about the history that you're making. And as always, Each one teach one, each one reach one. I will see you all tomorrow for Freeform Fridays. And don't forget, on Fridays, we do start a half an hour early because we have a lot to get in there. So, and as always, if there's a topic you want me to talk about, or you want to come on and chit chat with me and have a conversation with Taz, feel free. Bye, y'all.